Learning the piano is hard. It requires a massive amount of determination, discipline, and most importantly, consistency over a long period of time to be able to sit at the piano day after day when really all that your fingers are creating can hardly be called music is a very laborious task, but necessary to be able to achieve some kind of skill in the piano. I don't believe in willpower because willpower is predicated on in the moment motivation, which is not enough to be able to learn something like the piano. What you need to learn the piano is a consistent habit of practice that you can sustain for a long period of time and that you actually enjoy so that you will actually do it for a long period of time. And this is exactly how I managed to achieve a grade 8 in piano at the age of 16 in just 3 years. And even though at the time I didn't realize the methods I was using, this perfectly explains how I managed to achieve the grade 8 in such a short period of time and why I managed to achieve the skills that I have in piano today. And so in this video, I'm going to show you exactly how I did that and how you can do the same thing to learn something like the piano with enjoyment. So if you haven't switched off so far, let's begin the video. I've just read a book called Atomic Habits by the author James Clear, who outlines how to make and form good habits in your day. So being able to do the things that you actually want to do and actually achieve those things, and how to break bad habits that you don't want to do within your days. And in his book, he goes through many different principles. The first one he talks about is the 1% change. If you make a small 1% change every single day, over many years, that will compound to something that's really big. So for example, if you were to save just £1 every single day, after a few years, that will equate to a lot of money. Even though that £1 doesn't seem very much, over a few years, that's actually quite a lot of money. The same thing is with practice. If you practice something, anything, every single day, the progress that you actually make in that day is actually very little. But when it's compounded over a long period of time, it equates to a large change and a skill in a certain area. And the other thing he talks about is focusing on systems rather than goals. And although he does say that goals are very important because they show us where we need to go, they give us the path. If you don't have any systems in place on how to get there, it's very unlikely you'll actually achieve those goals. So he talks about implementing systems and the goals will look after themselves. He then goes on to talking about identity. It's the difference between saying I am a piano player as opposed to saying I want to be a piano player or I wish I could play the piano. If you can assume the role, you're much more likely to actually become that role and be able to do that thing a lot quicker than if you say something like I just want to play the piano. He then talks about reducing the friction between you and the habit that you want to do. And this is where the 4 steps on how to form a habit comes in. This is the most important part. And this is what I'm going to go through now. So the first step is cue, and that's to make it obvious. So for example, if you wanted to eat healthy, if you want to start eating more fruit, then you're much more likely to start eating fruit if that fruit is in a bowl out on the table, easy to grab. If it's there, obvious, then you're much more likely to eat that fruit as opposed to when it's in the cupboard hiding away and there's a slight barrier in between you and that piece of fruit. Number 2 is craving. You're going to make the habit something that you crave, something that you want to do. You're going to make it attractive. So for example, if you want to lose weight, you need to go to the gym. If you don't like going to the gym, then you need to make the gym something that you start liking. So you've got to change the experience somehow. So you could, for example, listen to your favorite audiobook, or maybe listen to your favorite music. The more that you do that, the more that then you associate that pleasure with the gym, and after you start forming a habit, then it doesn't matter anymore. The hardest part is the first part. Once you make it into a habit, then it's a lot easier to continue going down that route. Number 3 is response, and that's to make it easy. James Clear talks about how you can condense almost any habit into 2 minutes. You're much more likely to go to the gym if it's only for 2 minutes than if it was for 2 hours. And although yes, you've got to make that trip to go down there, it seems like a small task in comparison to 2 hours. So he says, make it realistic. Make it so small that you can't not do it. And then you can then start to build after that. And then finally, number 4 is reward. You've got to give yourself an immediate reward because our brains are built towards doing the things that give us immediate pleasure and immediate reward, which is exactly why people like to go and make big purchases, such as a new Xbox or buying clothes, because it gives us that immediate satisfaction. Same reason why we prefer to eat junk food is because the sugar, the fats, they give us that immediate pleasure and makes us feel good. So if you can make the habit that you want to do rewarding, then you're much more likely to do it. So for example, if you want to be able to go to the gym, then to have your favorite workout food afterwards will then make that a reward and make you more likely to want to do it, something to look forward to afterwards. So these 4 steps is something that I realized that I implemented when I was 13 and I started playing the piano. My cue was that I had the piano in the center of the house. It was accessible and ready to play anytime that I wanted. And the fact that it was in the center of the house also meant that I frequently walked past it, and because it was easy to play, I could play the piano within about 2 seconds of thinking to myself that I want to play the piano. So removing this barrier makes it a lot easier for me to do the habit, as opposed to if the piano was packed away, then it'd be a lot harder for me to actually practice, and I would have certainly practiced a lot less than when it's out ready for me to play. Number 2, craving, make it attractive. I was fortunate enough to have a piano that was actually really nice to play. It was a nice sounding piano, and it was nice for my fingers, had a nice touch. And even though I wasn't particularly great at the beginning and I couldn't play too much, whenever I could play actually sounded nice, as opposed to if I had an old rickety children's keyboard that didn't feel very nice and didn't sound very nice, I'll be a lot less likely to continue practicing a piano like that. Number 3, response, which was to make it easy. This was probably the area that I think I did the best and was the reason I think that I was so consistent in my practice. And that's because every time I went and sat down to practice, I very rarely had a time that I had to practice for. So I would practice maybe for 2 minutes, or next time I practice for 10 minutes, sometimes half an hour. I'll essentially sit down, play, and when I don't want to play anymore, then I get up and I do something else. The advantage of being a 13-year-old is that I didn't actually have that much to do. I shared an Xbox with my brother, so I could only play that some of the time. And the other times I had to then entertain myself. And so what I would do is go on my computer for 5-10 minutes, get bored, and so I'll then end up going and playing the piano. I might play that for 2-3 minutes, and then get bored again, and then go back to the computer or do something else. And I was frequently going back and forth for a good few hours, quite consistently most days. I was actually able to ensure, coincidentally, that my mind wouldn't fatigue because I was doing these short bursts. And so I think I got a lot more out of it than if I did, say, a whole hour in a row, because after 20-30 minutes, your mind really does start to tire out. And number 4 is reward. I think the greatest reward when you're playing the piano is that you're constantly making progress, and so you're always learning new pieces. And so even though at the beginning these are very, very simple pieces, because you've never played anything before, you have that reward, that pleasure. As you progress to the next piece, it's slightly harder, slightly more complex, and so you have that heightened reward. And so it goes on. And so it's this linear progression that goes up and up and up, because you're playing better pieces all the time and you're getting better. And one of the biggest motivations is to see your own progress. So in conclusion, if you want to be able to play the piano, you do need to make it obvious. It needs to be out, it needs to be ready to play. You need to have a craving for it, it needs to be attractive. So it does need to be a good quality piano. It's worth investing in a piano. If you want your children to learn the piano, then they're much more likely to learn it if there's a good piano in the house. You need to make sure that there's never any large expectations to practice for long periods of time, and you need to make sure there's some kind of reward, which if you're doing the first 3, will likely come inevitably. These steps can be applied to almost any habit that you want to make, and I'll certainly recommend reading Atomic Habits because it goes into more detail and it is a really, really great book. And at the end of the day, it's creating an environment that will allow you to succeed. If you create that environment, it's very hard not to succeed. Without that environment, it's very easy to fail. So I hope that's been useful. Maybe that's inspired you to learn the piano again. I hope it has. If you want to find out how learning the piano impacts the brain, then check out my video here. Otherwise, I'm going to end this video with a video of myself playing the piano 8 years ago. So that's when I was the age of 17, which is 1 year after my grade 8, playing a piece from the Toy Story. So I hope you enjoy it, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.